Welcome back to this week's episode of Mystery Garage. And in today's episode, it is episode 4 on the VR6 swap Jetta coupe. And we are jumping into things like exhaust system, fuel system, and a bunch of other stuff like that. We're getting down to the nitty gritty of us getting all the final details settled up so we can finally start this thing. So let's jump into it. All right, welcome back to the Mystery Garage. And for those of you who are catching up, may never seen this car, or those have been watching all 3 episodes until today. Today is episode 4 on the VR6 swap Jetta coupe, where it arrived to us 3 episodes ago as a 1.6 liter turbo diesel. And today we're getting ever so close to having it leave as a VR6 swap car. So what we did in episode 1 was pull the engine out, clean up the engine bay. Episode 2, we dropped the engine in, did a bunch of test fitting. Episode 3, we did a lot of plumbing, layout, we jumped into some electrical stuff and kind of started working up to today's episode. Now in today's episode, we're going to tackle things like exhaust, fuel system. Again, because this car was a turbo diesel, we'll have to do a bit of a diesel swap situation. And we'll work up until hopefully getting ready to start the car. Now, I'm not making any promises, but we're gonna keep working at it. As you can see, my hands are already dirty. Stuff on the car has been done since last episode, so we'll jump into catching you guys up. Started off with getting to work on the exhaust, and then we bolted on the front end. So let's roll to the time lapse, and I'll show you guys what I got done. We're a little bit short for space here, so I'm going to show you that it's all done. So we have the flange collector and then into the flex and then into the rest of the pipe. And you can see here I've also welded an O2 bung, made sure that it's up tucked under, at least even under this frame rail. So meaning if this car ever were to bottom out for whatever reason, it's not going to snag the O2. Bungs welded in, wires tucked up real nice. So that is it for the exhaust tie-in. As far as fluids go, we got everything all filled up. Brake fluids in there. That's also going to feed the master. Then we have all the coolant. I like to, and hopefully you guys saw it in the time lapse, but I like to pre-fill all my hoses to make sure I got most of the air pockets out. It's not going to get everything out, and you don't have to do it this way, but I just prefer it. So I fill the radiator, basically backfill the radiator till it kind of comes out the spout. I fill the hose that goes into the engine, and generally speaking, you'll see it backfill up here, which is exactly what happened. I've put no liquid in the bottle. I've actually fed it up through the bottom by filling the hose. When you hold it up high, it'll be higher than the bottle. It will actually fill the bottle for you. So Again, it doesn't have to be done that way. It's just the way I prefer to make sure I got as many air pockets out as possible so you don't run into any issues with airlock in the future. Everything else in the engine bay, for the most part, is taken care of. All the connectors and clips and everything are in place. And then also, you know, I've thrown on the front end. Everything seems to be almost ready to go. We still obviously need to do the fuel system. So we're going to tie that in. I'm also going to blast these off and blow through to make sure there's nothing remaining in the lines before I actually hook them back up to the engine. I'd really just set them up right now to make sure my lengths and everything were good. Still do need to put the ECU in the car, but we're going to do that last. I'm not too concerned about that right now. As you can see, everything's looking sharp. Made sure I used as many factory clips as I could. Everything is basically as if this car came from the factory with the VR. So that's pretty cool. All right, so I gotta get to the back of the car to do the fuel tank and the fuel system. So what I'm actually gonna do is go ahead, throw the wheels on, drop the car down. I'm actually gonna flip it in the garage just so I have way more room. You can see I got motors and stuff back there. It's just too tight to work. So we're gonna actually turn the car around and get to work on the fuel system. So let's get to work. All right, so the car is back down on the ground and ready to turn it around. I did hop into the clutch bleed, and was that ever a lot of work trying to get that to bleed. I ended up taking off the slave, holding it up in the air, trying to bleed from that. It took a lot of time and effort, but I didn't think it was worth filming too much of it. But you can see now the fluid line comes right off of the brake reservoir down to the master, which is underneath the pedal box, and then out to the slave cylinder that's here. I do have some final bleeding. I just need the wife later to help me out with that, just to get the final little details done. But for now, it's working. We're ready to continue to move things forward. So now I am going to pull the car out of the garage, flip it around, bring it back in, and start working on this Mark III fuel tank swap. So let's get to it. All right, a lot has gone on, so it's time to get you guys caught up to what's happening. First of all, it's fall here right now, and the leaves are falling and they're blowing in the garage, and it's driving me absolutely nuts. Anyway, so the snag we hit was, this is the Mark II diesel tank, this is the Mark III gas tank, and the issue here is, besides a couple differences, one is the pump hole is slightly smaller in a Mark II than it is on a Mark III. And what the owner did here was bought a second-hand Mark III tank from somebody, but didn't buy the pump because he wanted to put in a new pump, so he bought a new pump. Issue being is between the pump sending unit lid and the tank itself, there is a rubber kind of gaskety O-ring. Looks exactly like this. it's a bigger size. The issue is the person who sold this tank secondhand kept the pump, but also kept the O-ring that goes with it. And a new pump doesn't come with the O-ring. And I didn't even think to check to see if the O-ring was there. So I actually don't have that O-ring, and it is absolutely crucial. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. So that's gonna delay the completion of today's episode for sure, because I need to edit this and get it released to you guys, and I don't have time to get that seal right now. So we may still move ahead, throw the tank in. I'm hoping that the hole in the floor, which I'm pretty sure it is big enough to facilitate me pulling the pump top out and putting the gasket back in while it's in the car. And I'll check that quickly. But between the two tanks, for anybody who doesn't know, they are relatively the same. Again, the pump sizing is different. On a Mark II, you have two pumps. So in this case, if this was a gas car, you'd have a primary pump that pumps from the tank down to the secondary pump. The secondary pump is the bigger pump, and it pumps and filters and sends it up to the engine bay. In a Mark III, which is why people like to do this swap, is it takes away those two separate pumps and just puts one big pump that pumps from here right to the engine bay. The benefit of that, sorry, there's a filter down in the lower location where the pump normally is, but the benefit of this is it gets away from the secondary pumps. Plus, in a Mark II, that secondary pump filter housing leaks all the time. It's just something that's really hard to get away from. It's actually almost impossible to find a new one if yours is leaking. So the Mark III tank swap is kind of the best way to go around that, and you just get a way better system at the end of the day. In place in a diesel, because let's not forget this car is a diesel, in place of a diesel of the secondary pump, and well, first of all, it replaces the primary pump. There is no primary pump in the tank, but in place of the secondary pump and filter housing in a diesel is actually this unit, which is a water separator. And so I have pulled this out and just linked the line underneath. I'm going to need to get some sort of filtration system, because currently right now, in place of this, I don't have a filter. What would have been nice was to get the Mark III filter housing out of the same car the tank came from, but the owner didn't grab that, and I don't have one around. I'm gonna see if I can snag one locally, but again, that's another hang up that's gonna slow us down for today's episode. But I'll show you under the car and kind of what's going on with that. Now again, the tanks are virtually the same. The only thing that's different again is the size of the pump housings and some little minor details about the tank, but the tank itself and the way it fits in the car is exactly the same. So location of the pump housing is still the same, or the access to the sending unit still the same. The neck or the nozzle that comes up to the filler is still the same. There's no issues there, as well as the way it straps up to the car. I don't know if you can see that right there. Sorry, finger's dirty. And kind of in the far distance right there. All still the same, but what you are going to need, because the belly of the tank is slightly larger, you are going to need to bin the Mark II straps and actually put on the Mark III straps, which we have. The other thing you're going to need to grab is a pigtail for the pump. Now, where's mine? Right here. So this is the Mark III plug that plugs into the pump top. You're going to need to splice this in. Now, if this was a gas car, these 4 wires, you have 2 sending wires, 2 sending wires and 2 fuel pump wires. They're the heavier gauge is the pump power, pump ground, sending unit basically positive, and then sending unit ground. That's what you're going to have, and you're going to color match these to the harness that's coming from the car, because they are the same colors, and you just basically butt connect them or solder them or whatever you're comfortable with, and away you go, you're done. But for me, this car is a diesel. It's set up differently. What we have right here is the sender for the fuel pump level on the diesel, and then you have so this is the ground of the two. This is the sender wire. These two are for the water separator. One of them is an indicator for the dash, and the other one is the power that's signaled from ignition positive or power. So I am going to, no, let's not get this wrong. I believe it's the black. Yeah, it's the black yellow that I want to that I want to have the constant power on, or the start run power. This one I'm actually going to use as my fuel pump power wire. because I don't want to run all the way to the front with a separate wire. So I'm going to make sure that this works. I'm pretty sure that this will work for the fuel pump. If it doesn't, what I'm actually going to do in this case, and again, this is not going to happen to you guys, but it's happening to me because we're doing the diesel conversion. If this doesn't function the fuel pump properly, which I believe it will, but if it doesn't, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find this wire up at the CE2 fuse box and actually just cut it and splice it into the proper power wire. Now if you look in the wiring here, again, this is the same breakdown I used for the wiring episode. It's just you're looking at central electric wiring, just breaks down everything. If you flip to the section that talks about the fuel tank wiring harness, you're going to see here that it's fuel pump ground, fuel pump power, but it talks about your water separator and its main fuse box start run. So this is what I'm going to use to function the fuel pump, at least try to, and see if that works. If it doesn't, all I need to do is go in, find M2 and hook that up to this wire where it connects to the fuse box. I hope that makes sense, but that's a quick way to do it. So we're just going to actually cut these off and then wire this in, and then everything should function as it should. And if it doesn't, I'm just going to make the change of this wire. I probably will actually make the change anyways, but again, that'll be something I do off camera up front at some other time. But other than that, we are going to carry on. I'm going to go ahead and lift that tank into place. We're going to make sure that I can get full access to that pump housing, because if I can't, then I'm gonna have to leave it out until I get that gasket, which is super annoying. And then I hopefully will find a filtration housing from a Mk3. If I can't, I'll do something aftermarket like I did in my Mk1. VR6 swap worked really easy. I just located it in the engine bay and everything was cool. So I'm gonna throw it back into time lapse. I'm gonna get this thing back up in the car and we're gonna keep moving ahead. Back down on the ground and ready to rock, and like I had thought, fits perfectly. I'm pretty sure that's actually the standard size for a gas, so I don't think Mk3 hole size is any different than the gas Mk2. I was just thinking diesel for a second, but anyway, so that's all set up. I will have to get that gasket, we'll switch that up, and then I will wire it in and we will be done with that. So for now, I'm going to flip the car back around, and there we have it. We have a few more small things to do. We're going to put the seal on the pump, between the pump and the tank. We're going to wire it into the CE2 box properly. Then a little bit of stuff in the engine bay, like putting the ECU under there, inside the car, and a couple other little tiny things. I'm probably going to rebleed the clutch one more time just to make sure it is absolutely up to snuff. And then we should be ready for fire. Today has been a long and dirty day. I'm tired. We've taken care of a lot of small stuff on the car. And guys, I really do recommend you head out to the garage and get the little stuff done on your project to see it through. It's this kind of stuff that kills you and kills a build and slows it right down, and often doesn't see it through when it's all the little things combined. We're nearly there. Stay tuned to the next episode when we finally get the opportunity to turn the key. I'm so looking forward to it. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't currently subscribed to the channel, highly recommend that you do. Also, don't forget to tap that bell so you get a notification when the next episode drops. So thank you very much for watching. Till next time, take care. All right, late night update. You guys can see here, I ended up finding a Mk3 filter housing tonight. So I got that all put on. Everything's set up. I like keeping it factory, so this is awesome that I was able to do that. That is one more box checked, and we are getting closer to getting ready to fire.